Hello, everybody. Welcome to Storytime again from the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois. The story we have for you today comes from India, and it's a story about a man who needed some help and got some help. This is the story of the magic cooking pot. Once, long ago in India, there was a very poor man. He had a wife and many children, but not a lot of money. And so his family was always hungry. In fact, there came a time when the man was rather worried that his family might actually starve to death. And he didn't know what to do. And so he decided that he was going to go and pray to the goddess Durga to help him. Now, he had always followed the goddess Durga, and he had always done what she asked. And so he was very careful to pray only to her and to ask her to help him anytime he needed help. Well, this time, every time he'd start to try to pray, something would interrupt him. A noise outside, one of the children crying, something. And so he decided he needed to go somewhere where there was no distractions so that he could pray very, very hard to the goddess Durga to help his family. And so he began to walk. He said goodbye to his family, and he began to walk, trying to find some place where he could go and be alone. But it didn't matter where he went. In the countryside, there were farmers and animals. In the city, there were lots of people. He just couldn't find a good place until finally he came to the edge of the jungle. And then he thought, yes, the jungle. Not many people go into the jungle, so I will go deep into the jungle and I will find some place that I can be alone. And that's what he did. He went deep, deep into the jungle until he came to a little clearing where he just had the feeling that no one had ever been there before. And so he knelt down and he began to pray to the goddess Durga. Now, he had always followed the goddess Durga. He had always made certain that he washed before he ate, and he prayed every day. And so the goddess Durga heard his prayers this day, and she appeared before him, and she said, "Do not worry. Your family will soon have more than enough rice to eat." And then she disappeared. And in her place, where she had been standing, there was a clay cooking pot. It looked like an ordinary cooking pot. And when the man got up and went and looked inside of it, he found that it was empty. And he thought, well, what good is a cooking pot if I have nothing to cook in it? But the goddess Durga had left it for him, and so he picked it up and he began to walk out of the jungle carrying this clay cooking pot. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm carrying something in my arms, I sometimes trip on things that are under my feet that I don't see. And sure enough, as the poor man tried to leave the jungle, he tripped over some branches and some vegetation that was on the ground. And he fell down. And when he fell down, of course, he dropped the cooking pot. Well, the cooking pot rolled onto the ground, and then it tipped over. And a shower of the finest rice you've ever seen fell out of the cooking pot. And that was when the poor man understood that the goddess Durga had given him a magic cooking pot. Now, as hungry as he was not about to eat that rice without washing first. And so he took off his shirt and he laid it on the ground, and very carefully he picked up every grain of that very, very good rice, and he put it in his shirt. And then he picked up his shirt and he continued out of the jungle, carrying the cooking pot in one hand and his shirt full of rice in the other. And when he got out of the jungle, on the edge of the jungle there, he saw an inn. And so he went to the innkeeper and he said, "Would you please watch my cooking pot for me? Be very, very careful. It is a very special cooking pot, and I do not wish it to get damaged or for anyone to take it. Are you sure that you can watch it very carefully?" And he pushed so very hard for the innkeeper to keep a very close eye on his special cooking pot that the innkeeper began to wonder just what was so special about this pot. And And so when the poor man went away to wash and to pray and to eat his rice, the innkeeper began to examine the cooking pot. He looked inside of it, but it was empty. He looked all around the outside of it. There were no special designs or any signs or symbols on it anywhere. It was just a plain, ordinary clay cooking pot. Unless there was a symbol on the bottom. And he picked up the pot and he turned it over. And when he did, a shower of the finest rice fell out. And that was when the innkeeper understood that this was a magic cooking pot. Well, he wanted the magic cooking pot for himself. And so he thought to himself, and he realized that he had an ordinary clay cooking pot that looked very much like this one. And so he took the magic cooking pot and he swapped the ordinary clay cooking pot for it. And then he went to tell his wife and his sons about their good fortune and show them the magic cooking pot. Well, when the poor man had washed himself and prayed in thanks to the goddess Durga and then eaten his rice, he came back to get the pot from the innkeeper, and the innkeeper gave him the ordinary clay cooking pot. The poor man walked home, thinking to himself happily about how happy his family was going to be when they saw all the beautiful rice they would have to eat and how they would no longer be hungry anymore. And when he got home, his children still looked sad and hungry. But he said to them, "Don't worry, we are going to have the finest rice ever. The goddess Durga has given me a magical cooking pot. Come and see, come and see." And so the family all gathered round. And the man took the pot and he turned it upside down. And no rice came out. Nothing came out at all. His children's faces were still sad and hungry. His wife looked worried. He did not understand what had happened. He knew the goddess Durga had given him a magic cooking pot. Oh, but then he remembered that he had left it with the innkeeper, and he realized that the innkeeper must have stolen his magic pot and given him an ordinary pot instead. And so he declared that he would go back to the inn and get the magic cooking pot back. Now his family did not want him to go, for they were afraid that their father had lost his mind while he was in the jungle and that he'd gone crazy. For he kept talking about a magic cooking pot. Magic cooking pots don't exist. That can't happen. You can't just turn over a pot and have rice fall out. That's not the way the world works, Father. But he insisted that he had a magic cooking pot and that he was going back to the inn to get it back from the thieving innkeeper. And to try as they might, his family could not stop him. And so he traveled out across the land back to that inn. And when he got back to the inn, he called for the innkeeper and he said, "You stole my magic cooking pot. I want it back. I need it to feed my family." The innkeeper just laughed at him, and he called to his two big sons, who came out with big sticks and beat the poor man until he ran away. Well, he didn't know what to do now. He didn't have the magic cooking pot. He didn't have any food for his family. The only thing he could think to do was to go back into the jungle that was right there and pray to the goddess Durga again for help. And so he did. He went deep, deep into the jungle and he found a clearing, one that he had a feeling that no one had ever been in before. And he knelt down and he began to pray to the goddess Durga. Well, the goddess Durga heard him again, and she appeared to him again and she said, "Well, I will give you one more magic cooking pot. Use it wisely." And then she disappeared. And in her place, there was another clay cooking pot. Well, the poor man went over to it and examined it carefully, and then, anticipating the rice that would fall out, he turned it over. But instead of rice, what came pouring out of the cooking pot was little demons that began to bite and to nip and to bat and to slap at the poor man. Well, thankfully, he had enough presence of mind to turn the pot right side up again. And as soon as he did, the demons stopped beating on him and jumped back into the pot. Aha, he said to himself, now I know what the goddess meant when she said to use this pot wisely. And so he left the jungle and he went back to the inn. And he went to the innkeeper and he said, Innkeeper, I want my magic cooking pot back. Now the innkeeper was rather surprised to see this man appear out of the jungle again with another cooking pot. What kinds of treasures might be in that pot, the innkeeper wondered. But he told the poor man that he would not give him back his magic cooking pot, and he called to his sons to come and beat the poor man away again. But as soon as his sons came into the room, the poor man turned over the cooking pot he held in his hands, and the demons jumped out, and they began to beat and to bat and to slap and to smack and to beat and to pound on the innkeeper and his two sons. And they cried out, Stop! Make them stop! Please, please, make them stop! And the poor man said, I want my magic cooking pot back. And they said, Yes, yes, we'll give it to you. We'll give it to you. Fine. Bring it out. And they went and they got it very quickly and they brought it out. And then the poor man turned the demon pot right side up again, and all of the demons stopped beating on the innkeeper and his sons and jumped back into the pot. And so the poor man took up the pot with the demons in it, and he took up the magic cooking pot that made rice, and he walked back to his family with both pots. When he arrived home, the very first thing he did was find a very safe hiding place for the second cooking pot, just in case he ever needed the pot with the demons in it again. And then he called to his family and he said, Come, come, come. They were all so happy to see him, for they had been afraid he would never come home again. And then he said, Watch, we shall have plenty to eat from now on. And he turned the cooking pot upside down, and a shower of the finest rice came out. And finally, he got to see the happy, excited looks on the faces of his children, and the worried look disappear from his wife's face as they realized they would now have plenty of rice to eat from that day on. And indeed they did. In fact, there was so much rice from the magic cooking pot that they were able to give some to the other poor families in town, and no one in their town ever went hungry again. There was even enough rice left over that they were able to sell some in the nearby cities. And the poor man was poor no longer. He was able to live comfortably for the rest of his life, and he was never hungry again. And that is the story of the magic cooking pot from India. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll come back and join us again. We will not have a story on Friday, but we will have a story next week on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central Time here from the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois. We'll see you later, everyone. Bye.